as always, I was going to do our regular intro, Eric, but it's been so long since we've done this.
I'm surprised you've forgotten it by now.
I know. Tell me about it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the return of Bowling Evolved, the talk show by real bowlers for real bowlers, with myself, Dustin J. Markowitz, and of course, the 5-time PBA national champion and millionaire on the PBA Tour, the best of the rest, Eric Forkel. Eric, it's great to see you, my friend.
Hey, it's been a while. We can still do this. How exciting.
Absolutely. Now, I do want a prerequisite before we start the show. You might notice some lag issues. We actually recently bought a new recording program called Debut. We're using Skype tonight as just to kind of get a show out there since we haven't done one since, I believe, September, or if not earlier. But so if there is a little lag issue, I do apologize. We should have it fixed by the next show. We're going to try to do one hopefully every couple of weeks again, kind of do something a little bit more consistent for you guys. Again, this is sort of us tiptoeing back in the water, and if Skype works out, great. If not, we're going to do something new in the future. But if anything, to everyone that has written to us and talked to us about the show, and Eric, I know you have gotten the same amount of messages I have. It's surprising our little audience does miss us, which is something to say, and I want to say thank you very much to all you guys. And also, a big thank you to Fred Eisenhammer, keeping the Bowling Evolved page going on Facebook. Of course, you can visit us at bowlingevolved.com, facebook.com/bowlingevolved. He posts some tremendous stories, and of course, you guys have been following him on that, so thank you so much. You fans are awesome. And if we could do this every day, I'm sure we would, but, we'd have to be paid for that, and I don't think Eric has the money to support me anymore. So.
No, I can't. You got to get a job. I can't take care of you anymore.
But, Dad...
What am I going to tell you? Get a job. Oh, wait, I always keep getting that. Why don't I'm supposed to get a job. That's right. Anyway.
Yeah, you got to support, you have the 3 kids now, or the 2 dogs and me, so there's 3 kids, so, it's something along those
I understand.
Anyway, let's jump right into it again. It's been a while. There's been a lot of things going on in the bowling world, and I think the best place to start right now is, of course, what's been going on in the PBA, what's been going on in bowling in general. And I'll tell you what, Eric, there has been some amazing stories happening. I mean, we had the youngest winner on the PBA Major of all time. We've had the two-handed phenomenon. We've had the Brian Voss Belmonte controversy. I can go on and on. It just doesn't end.
Yeah, it's been exciting times if you're a bowling enthusiast. There's all kinds of things on the web. Social media is pretty amazing. This kind of stuff was around 20-something years ago, but it just didn't get out as quickly as things get out now. It's out in a blink. It's out in an instant, and everyone talks about it, or they type about it. They put it out there. Everyone's a buzz over this current thing.
It's amazing. I know from even the last 25 years I've been bowling, it's been such a renaissance, if you will, to have news and have the interaction. I will say one thing in particular about the PBA right now. The bowlers, as well as staff, Tom Clark in general, they are very interactive with the fans now. And I know, Eric, as you grew up, not only as a fan, but of course as a major touring star, you had an opportunity to interact with the fans, but now the turnaround and the immediacy of what's been going on through Twitter and Facebook, I've never seen anything like it. Just to see literally your champion tweeting right after he wins. Obviously it wasn't around 20 years ago.
No, that part's pretty amazing. And sometimes I think, God, I wonder what it would have been like to have that back in what I call the heydays, the 80s, the 90s, when it was really flourishing out there with sponsorship and tournaments. But they have all that now. They have all the sophisticated technological stuff with, the instant getting stuff out to the media right away. And here, to me, they don't have as much stuff to bowl anymore. They've got to travel all over the world still. And it's a shame in that regard. But with social media, things happen in an instant. And guys are tweeting and texting, and sometimes they're texting in the middle of while they're bowling. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's almost craziness. But that's how it is nowadays.
Absolutely. Now, let's jump into some of the more fun stuff. And by fun, I mean controversial, because Lord knows that's what we base our show on.
Yeah, it's nice to have the controversy, because if everyone got along and everyone agreed, it would be quite boring. So you got to have a point and a counterpoint, and there's been a lot lately. Well, it is an election year, so we might as well just keep it going along in that same way.
That's a good argument right there. I like that. But let's jump right now into probably what is the hottest argument in social media and in bowling in general right now, which is, of course, the Brian Voss versus Jason Belmonte controversy. Now, for those fans that do not know what was written, essentially Brian Voss, of course, Hall of Fame bowler, tremendous athlete, guy, was one of a kind. It's as simple as that. He has gone out to be I'm trying to think of a great, traditionalist comes to mind, but I think some of his ideas and ideologies goes beyond traditionalism as we might know it. But he's very conservative about where the sport has gone, and he believes that things such as two-handed bowling no longer needs to be around, that it should be banned. You should have to use your thumb in the ball. That equipment has gone too far in bowling, that things have gone to the point where it's not bowling anymore. Whereas Jason Belmonte, of course, the proponent for two-handed bowling, seems to have a much different perspective on the sport. Obviously, that bowling is changing, and it always has changed. He believes that the equipment, the styles, and everything in between have made bowling a better sport for it. It continues to evolve, and now a new generation of bowlers are starting to evolve. Now, Eric, I'm going to pose this question to you. Obviously, you come from the same era as Brian. You've bowled in both generations, really. Where do you see bowling has gone right or gone wrong, and where do you sit in this whole controversy?
Well, obviously, I think they're both right, if that's possible. It's kind of hard to pick a side, even though I'm from that old school mentality. I was around out there when Mike Miller was the first guy to take his thumb out of the ball and learn how to become a palm bowler and change his career tremendously. Same thing with Bob Benoit. We're talking back in the late 80s and during that time. But Brian, his big thing is not only the two-handed bowling, but the technology, the bowling balls, that they take away a player's ability to create things with their hand and the skills that they need to work on. You just can't grab a ball and have the ball do everything. So I think his biggest beef is with the technology that has been created. And then when you throw the two-handed player on top of that, and then it becomes a double-edged sword right there. And what it does to the lane. You've heard all kinds of players. Ryan Schaefer, as a matter of fact, he writes a lot on Facebook talking about how the two-handed player, the way they destroy the lanes with their rev rate, it makes it almost impossible a lot of times for the guys who use their thumb to get a ball motion, because those guys create so much torque, it changes the shape of the lane. So this controversy has been going around for a bunch of years now, but somebody asked Brian to give his opinion, and when Brian speaks, people listen. And he even said, you're going to love me, or you're going to hate me when I'm done with this. And that's exactly true. Tons of people respect him, and now tons of people are going to say, hey, come into the nowadays, get out of the Stone Age. Chad Murphy got involved. Chad Murphy with the USBC. He has his, he put his spin on it. His was a little interesting to say the least, but you could see the problem there. And it just, tit for tat, they went back and forth, and other people have chimed in. Mike Miller talked about his story, and there's so many stories. And then Belmo wrote his big thing. And, obviously Belmo's going to protect his brand. He gets paid extremely well from Storm. He's created a phenomenon of what he does because he's exceptional at what he does. So he's going to protect his brand. He's going to say, yeah, it's the greatest thing. It's great for kids. It's great for this. He's going to push it, of course, because that's what made him him. He's been the player of the year 3 years in a row now. He's a phenomenal, no doubt. And the tour has definitely gotten younger. All the guys out there who are bowling well, they're all really, really young. And there's a bunch of two-handers, of course, like the kid who won the Masters. 19, 20 years old, 21, something like that. 19 years old. It's definitely a youth movement. But, hey, this happened back in the day, too. Back in the, I'm sure when the guys in the 70s were winning, the guys in the 60s didn't like it. Guys who were older back then didn't like it. And in the 80s and in the 90s, there's definitely a progression. The progression's been, there's everything always advances. But sometimes it doesn't always advance for the good. And you're going to have some people are going to say it's good, and you're going to have some people say it's bad. So again, you're never going to get people to agree on this. Just like when Mark Roth and Marshall Holman came along in the 70s. The guys from the 60s, those guys aren't going to last. Flash in the pan, too much revs, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing. Just fast forward 30, 40 years, here we are.
Well, I had a chance to write a little piece on Facebook, and I'd actually like to take a second to read my thoughts here, because I feel that I have a very unique perspective on not just two-handed bowling, but I started in 1990, which basically was when reactive urethane was first started being developed. It was mass-produced in '92. I had the opportunity to interview Steve Cooper before he passed away. That was the last interview he did. So I sort of had a chance to see I grew up in the modern era, if you will.
Right.
And now, of course, due to my wrist being destroyed more or less, to all you kids at home, 25 years of bowling, averaging about 1,500 to 2,000 games per year, and snapping the ball for your whole career might not be the best idea. Learn better hand.
You should have been wearing a mongoose the whole time. You would not have had this problem.
I know. I will say the new product by Mongoose is tremendous. I have been wearing mine, but we'll give him his shameless plug here. I'm sure Steve will.
The clean shot is awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. But this is what I had to write, and it's not too long, but I said that I've been asked about the Brian Voss and Belmonte debate over two-handed bowling due to my unique position of having to switch due to injury. I can only say this. As there is no rule against it, and nothing is stopping any current one-hander to change the style if they feel it can make them a better bowler, how is it any different than any other change in bowling? You don't have to use one hand, you don't have to use reactive resin, you don't have to use a fingertip grip, you don't have to use different layouts, and you don't have to bowl with multiple balls either. Plain and simple, bowling has been, is, and will always be about finding ways to win. If you feel you can succeed with change for whatever reason, then go for it. Just remember that if you try to outlaw one adaptation to the sport, then you outlawed them all. I can't name one sport that has not had some sort of adaptation due to technique or technology over the last 100 years. Personally, while nostalgically unique, I think watching two guys throw wood balls with conventional grips on a non-oiled lane is not the best representation of what our sport is. Let the sport evolve and change to survive, not get whisked back without looking at the bigger picture. Now, I'm going to say this because we did mention it with the Brian Voss thing. This is where I do agree with Brian. Use our time to better understand what is working and how to adapt counter technology. For example, lane oil versus ball technology, instead of trying to destroy the basis for the modern game. That's my opinion, and that's where I think a lot of these quote-unquote traditionalists are not looking at the bigger picture. Again, fingertip grip, which really started being developed in the 40s and 50s, was not the norm, and it became the norm. You were able to put more on the ball, and obviously there was a lot of conventional bowlers through the 50s, 60s, and even into the 70s, but it was something that helped get better revs on the ball. It helped get better pin action. If you want to go back, plastic or polyester was more reactive than rubber. Urethane was more reactive than polyester. Reactive resin obviously was more reactive than urethane. Look at guys like Marshall Holman, who refused to make the jump because they felt they were holding on to something. I don't know. It's a nostalgia. It's grabbing onto something that's not there. And to imply that a two-handed bowler, at least in my humble opinion, is not as talented or as worthy of scoring or being a bowler as a one-handed bowler, to me is ludicrous. I look at a guy like Robert Smith, whose rev rate is the same as a guy with a two-handed ball style, but you don't see people up in arms about Robert Smith. Well, he puts his thumb in the ball. He only uses one hand. Well, he still has to hit a mark, just like Belmo does. He still has to pick the right ball. Obviously, that's a big part of the sport now, is having the right piece of equipment in your hands. And if you look at the PBA as a whole, and I'll use the Players' Championship right now, yes, there are a lot of young guys, and several two-handers were in the show. But if you look at all the two-handers out in the USBC and bowling in general right now, all the one-handers, it's still a small percentage that are making the shows. It's a simple.
I still think it's a one-handed sport. And I get what Belmo's saying, how the kids, he's got all these youth leagues with kids with two hands, and I know they're going to keep pushing that, and I guess it maybe 10, 15 years down the road, it might all be that way. But overall, it is still a one-handed sport. You don't see too many seniors out there bowling with two hands.
No, and that's the thing, too. I mean, I don't think you're going to see a huge change necessarily to two-handed. But if it does go that way, it's no different than any other revolution that bowling has seen. Again, the focus needs to not be on delivery style or equipment necessarily. It's about how to counteract the technology. I think Kegel has done a great job with their lane pattern positions, and I I know they work directly with USBC, but the fact of the matter is Kegel has got 40 or 50 different lane patterns that do affect the scoring pace of tournaments and leagues. And if you want to tell me that the oil pattern doesn't affect the equipment, I challenge any bowler right now to go watch the U.S. Open, go watch something that is a difficult lane pattern, and tell me why a guy like Pete Weber or Robert Smith or Jason Belmonte are averaging 2.0 instead of 250. If that doesn't have anything to do with the lane oil, then I don't know what does.
And that's been that way forever. I've said the same thing when it comes to these conditions. Conditions are everything. The bowling balls are tools. Yes, they create a better carry here and there, but you can take those balls out of play in an instant. So is it the technology, or it's and Brian did talk about the oil being put on the lanes. Oil on the lanes calls for spin. Well, if you can create more spin than someone else, then your ball is going to take a different motion at the back of the lane. Well, it's called, it's great to have accuracy and power. It's great to have that in any sport. Some people are more finesse players. Some people are more power players. When you can put the two together, well, now you've got a superstar. And there's not that many of them. But I mean, I still think, and again, this is only one part of the problem. There's just not a great tour anymore. There is still a tour, but it's not a great tour. They don't have 32 tournaments to bowl a year anymore. They don't have sponsors calling them every day to sponsor. They don't have all that extra money. That's the part that's the sad part. I don't care how you throw the ball, whatever. I think that's the part that's the biggest thing that's upsetting, is they don't have the money that used to go into it. They don't have the sponsorship. They don't have enough tournaments anymore. It's almost impossible to make a living except if you're just a few chosen people, a few small group. I mean, it was never overly tremendously lucrative, but there was a bunch of guys who could make a living. Now you have hardly anyone.
And obviously that's a big change too. I think that the PBA, and I would say the last year, has made some good strides though. I know we've taken our shots at the PBA. We've had Tom on the show.
Everybody does.
But at the same time, I have to say, they have put out a fairly consistent product in the last year. They've made some decisions that I agree with. I think I'll be, perfectly upfront. The flashy bowling has done some good. I think it has maybe boosted more of the recreational side of the sport than the competitive side of the sport. But again, bowling is still bowling any way you look at it. And we are going to get into another topic here a little bit later in the show, but we were talking about the generational gap between Eric's generation and then really my generation and younger, which is, or even younger than me, frankly. There's a big missing element there as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of people are concerned. But we'll get to that in a minute. But essentially, yeah, that's pretty much where it is, and I have a ton of respect for anyone that can do the two-handed style. But I will say from personal experience, having to switch to two-handed this season, and I'm 20 games in. I was 230 before I got hurt, average-wise. I had my honor scores, had my competitive ability. The one time I bowled Eric, I did manage to kick his butt in doubles. I do want to throw that out there, since I never did do that.
Every dog has his day.
That's exactly true.
And pigs fly all the time. So there you go. It happens.
Absolutely, they do. But I will say, I have done the last 20 games as two-handed. I'm averaging about 200 on the nose right now. And it is a totally different game. It's a totally different way to do everything that I've known as a one-handed bowler. I've always used a balance arm. I've always been very square at the line. Now I have to open up. I don't have the balance arm. I really got to watch my speed. I've got to watch my delivery. Consistency, it's not snapping through the ball at the bottom of the swing anymore. Now it's being able to get the ball to the same position and finding the right hand position. I know before it was, if I got not enough on the ball, we're talking flat 10, maybe a 7-pin, maybe a stone 8. Now, if I don't get enough on the ball and I don't get, I put too much ball speed on, now I'm missing the head pin right. If I get the ball out to the dry when I was one-handed, yeah, I'd go high, leave a 4-pin. Now I'm leaving splits I didn't even know there were names for. It's, seeing things that I'm taking out 4 pins out of the rack, and we're not talking leaving a head pin standing when I do it. So it's just a totally different game, and using the Players' Championship as a great example, you look at the top 5. Norm Duke's number 5 right now. Norm, yeah, he can turn the ball up, but his bread and butter has always been accuracy. He's always been about being down and in, being able to play the lane. And if you're going to tell me that a guy like Norm Duke is no better than a Jason Belmonte or it's an unfair advantage, The guy's won. He just won a title last year. You know, the guy's, and he's 50, 52, 51, 52, if I'm not mistaken. So again, I as I've said many times, the sport's going to evolve. Things are going to change. Let's concentrate on what we can do to continue promoting it positively and use counter technology as opposed to outlawing it. Because again, I don't want to watch two guys throw wood balls on an unoiled lane or throw mineralite on lacquer. I mean, that's
I mean, it's great to have the discussions and the debates and what can save it and what not, but they're not gonna eliminate the two-handed bowler. They're not gonna get rid of that revolution, so to speak. That's not gonna happen. So it's much to do about nothing. It's just, somebody asked Brian, why don't you give an opinion on the current state of the game? And he's gonna give it because he's very opinionated. I mean, Mike Machuga did it about 2 years ago. He wrote something of similarity. So, certain people, they like to get the word. Ryan Schaefer likes to talk a lot about things. Certain people like to talk and give their professional opinion on what is right or wrong with the current state of the game. Like I said, the current state of the game is there's not much of a game left. In that regard, the guys can't, there's not enough money. There's not enough events for guys to make a good living unless they want to travel overseas. That, to me, is the biggest problem. To create the profession for professionals to make a living. There's just a group of guys who can hang on right now. The rest, they've got other jobs, they're doing this and that. And that's the biggest problem. Again, I don't care how they throw it. I don't think people who watch professional bowling, I don't think the majority of them care about oil patterns and this, and I don't think they do. I mean, there's so many different things. I still think if the money was put in a certain way, none of these things would be talked about. It would not even be a discussion.
No, I totally agree, and I think you're 100% correct. I think most people that tune in each and every week, it's not about the oil pattern,
really?
It's not about the equipment. It's about watching what we consider the best bowlers in the world do what they do.
Yeah,
and if they, most of them know. I mean, even your casual fan knows if they see a guy struggle to shoot a $190 on TV, they're not thinking any less of that bowler. They're thinking, man, there's a hard pattern out there, or there's something. They're still knowing that these guys are, they shoot 300 on TV or whatever the case is. They know they're watching the best in the world.
Well, you would hope, and still, the majority of people who watch, they're bowlers. They're diehard bowlers. They're not getting newer people that I'm aware of to come watch this thing. They don't get it's a tough thing now because there's so many things for people to do besides bowl. There's so many other outlets out there. There's so many other sports channels. It's not just locked into one channel like it used to be. There's so many different options, the cable. There's just so many reasons why it's on the downslide. But how the style with the two hands versus a one hand, I don't think that's it at all. And I am from the old school, but I don't think that's the problem. I really don't. Not at all.
And you mentioned it is a niche audience, and of course the new viewers they are getting are the ones from the basically 8 to 20 demographic, 8-year-old to 20-year-old demographic, under 21, that are now starting to develop this new era of competitive bowling, which I will say, again, credit where credit is due. There's a lot of things I don't like about the PBA. There's a lot of things I don't like about USBC. But the one thing both groups have done well is cultivating this revolution, if you will, of new bowlers. And the fact of the matter is, if they don't do it, there's not going to be a next generation of bowlers. It's as simple as that. And, with that being said, you brought up another great point about tournaments and not being enough out there. And, Eric, I know there's a thorn in your paw, so to speak, and I believe by the time this show goes up, which hopefully will be, today is the 20th, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully by Monday the 22nd, the show will be up and running. There should be a story ran about a little, how we say, discrepancy that you have with a tournament being ran in Las Vegas. And, Eric, why don't you go ahead and talk about that a little bit, and maybe we can find ourselves a nice little discussion there as well.
God, I was hoping you'd ask. Well, it's really simple. The other day I get a message on Facebook from a friend of mine, Rick Francis, sends me an invite to a tournament. And I open it up. I'm like, hey, this looks pretty cool. This almost looks like a senior World Series of bowling. I'm like, hey, that's awesome. I've tried to compete in the regular World Series of bowling, but obviously I'm bowling against all the superstars and all the young kids, really challenging. So now I was always hoping that they would maybe create something for the guys over 50 because, you know, it's more of my age group and I got a better chance, of course. Why not? So I get this thing on Facebook. I open it up. It happens to be the, the South Point Senior Shootout, which is at the Plaza here in Las Vegas. A beautiful arena. Awesome. It's part of South Point. Mike Moniak out there and his staff. It's just a great venue, and I've had the opportunity to bowl in there a bunch of times, and it's a great place. It's an awesome looking place, and it's always fun to bowl in a place like that. So when I saw this, it's the tournament is scheduled, I think, in November. I believe it's November the 13th through the 17th. November 13th through the 17th of this year. And it's a multi-faceted tournament. You've got different events with different oil patterns. Like I said, it's very similar to the World Series of Bowling. So I said, wow, this sounds awesome. I can't wait. So I started reading the rules and the eligibility, and I'm like, it costs $750 to bowl. I said, that's great. And then I got to the part that said eligibility. And it said, well, you have to be over 50. I said, well, of course. And then it said that if you've won more than 3 PBA national titles at any point in your career, you're not eligible. And that's about the time where my blood started to boil. I'm like, what? Am I reading this right? But if you're over 63 and you've won over 3, we're going to let you bowl. I said, oh, so if I was 63, I could bowl because I've got 5 titles. But then again, if I had 2 titles, I could bowl. I'm sorry that I tried to be good back in my day and won some more titles. But if you're a 2-time titleist, you can play. But if you're a 3-time titleist, you're out. So I did a little more investigating, and the more I investigated, the more aggravated I got. And the rule was set up especially because they don't want the better senior players to bowl because they don't want to scare away the lesser senior players. In other words, we want to have an event. We want good bowlers there, but we don't want really good bowlers there. Which, again, I didn't realize professional bowling or even senior bowling was flourishing that much that you could pick and choose who you want to show up. I don't know, if I'm gonna kick off an event, I'm going to ask everyone to show up. And I want the best bowlers to show up because if they're behind it, then that means it's got to be something special. But I don't want no Walter Ray, no Parker Bone, no Norm Duke, none of those guys. I don't want anybody really, really good because I'm afraid it's going to scare away the other guys. They're not going to bowl. But then again, these same people will come here to Vegas and they'll bowl the Senior U.S. Open. They'll bowl the Masters. And those guys are in those tournaments. So again, I'm not understanding. So I sent the guy who's running the tournament, I sent him a message and I never got a response. So then I did a little more digging around. I asked a good friend of mine, Fred Eisenhammer, our guy, Fred. I said, I'm showing you this event. Can you, and I'm really aggravated about this. Maybe you could find out why they would do this. So he actually contacted the person, Ron Moore, and they had a discussion about it. He called me back and told me, how it all went down. He knew as soon as he put that rule in there who it was going to affect here in Las Vegas, me, of course. But the rule wasn't put in just for me. Of course not. It's so guys, the true superstars like Walter and Weber and those guys, we don't want them there. And I'm like, really? I said, because so guys like, say, myself, Dennis Horan, who's 50 now, Ryan Schaefer, who's turning 50 in October. Hey, guess what, Ryan? You can't bowl either because you've won 4 national titles or 5. You're good. You're too good. And he still bowls for a living and he can't come bowl this. So once again, even as we get older, they're telling you what you can and can't bowl depending on how well you bowled earlier in your life. But then again, if I was over 63, I could have 25 titles. But they're not worried because I'm older and I'm out to pasture, so to speak, and I'm not going to be able to hang with these young 50-year-olds. I mean, this is just This to me is a absolutely ridiculous, horrible rule. Even though I understand it, I still think it's disgraceful. I think it's wrong. I think I would want the best players there. I want the guy, the average Joe, or the average good senior player to beat one of the best players. Then that day they'll say, hey, how about when I beat Walter Ray, or how about when I beat Weber? Talk about a feather in your cap, beating one of the best. You're taking away the Cinderella story. You're taking away a guy's dream of beating one of the greatest. You know, a lot of guys who went out on the senior tour, they never had the chance to bowl the regular tour when they were younger because they were working. They had families, full-time job. But when they turned 50, they always wanted to fulfill that dream. A good friend of mine and yours, unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, Mr. Barry Gurney, he falls right in that category. He always wanted to do it when he was younger. He couldn't. But when he turned 50, he wanted to go out there and bowl against Earl and all those guys, Roth, who he never got a chance to. And guess what? He won 3-4 times out there. He got to bowl against those guys. Well, if a rule kind of like this was out there, and if they did have a rule like this, he never would have got that opportunity. So I realize this is just one tournament, but it's an event where something like that will not be allowed to happen. So yeah, it's a terrible thing. And then the more I've dived into this whole thing, the more aggravating I get over it. And it's really aggravating. And you've had experience with this in other events where they didn't let you bowl. And it's not a good feeling.
No, I've been on kind of both sides of it, so I can understand Ron, and I know there's a quote-unquote conglomerate of bowlers that were on the board deciding the rules here. So I have a very mixed opinion on this. Obviously, as you well know, Eric, I was the youngest tournament coordinator in Laughlin. I did that for 5.5 years, and I ran some very successful tournaments, several of which you even came down to shoot. And, I always believed from the tournament, sometimes you have to separate being a scratch bowler from being a tournament coordinator. And I understand that to some extent. From Ron's perspective, I get where he's coming from. He's looking at the same thing that the West Coast Senior Tour did. Well, we're losing bowlers because the better bowlers are in there. My argument to that is this, and I mentioned this before, there is a generational gap right now. Right now, the largest group of participatory league bowlers, basically in the U.S., are between the ages of 45 and 80, more or less. Eric, would you agree with that statement? And I believe I don't have the facts to back that up, but based on what I've seen, I could be wrong on that. However, that seems to be, at least in our part of the country, the general consensus. Then the next biggest group of bowlers that I see tend to be between the ages of 5 and, say, 25. The younger bowlers that have started to get a little bit more of that USBC and PBA influx when they start focusing on the younger bowlers. So that leaves a group of bowlers that aren't there, plain and simple. So with that being said, what happens in 5 years from now when the guy that was 65, that wasn't going to bowl because Eric bowled, but now is not going to bowl because he's 70 and he can't do it anymore, what's going to happen to those tournament groups or organizations or tournaments that can't count on them to bowl anymore? Are they going to get Eric to go bowl? No, because Eric's going to say, well, why would I want to bowl your tournament? You discriminated against me for half a decade. There's no point. And that's what doesn't make sense to me. I've been in events where, granted, a little bit different situation, but you went out there, and I remember one in particular. We won the bowl tournament, and they said, oh, we don't let anyone over averaging over 230 bowl. And I'm going, I'm the only one that averages over 230. Now all of a sudden I can't bowl. It's, again, I don't understand the mindset, because I agree. When I ran Master of the Mountain, which was the Laughlin, basically our 2 years, we ran essentially 13 tournaments that attracted a lot of great players. I mentioned Butch Soper before came up and shot, our good friend Butch, several other local, regional titleists. And it was such a thrill for scratch bowlers of all ages. I mean, you got to see guys come out to bowl against the best in the region. And they weren't going out there because, oh, it's a huge prize fund. I mean, yeah, there was good money, of course, but they wanted the pride to know that I'm going to be competing against who at one time was one of the best in the world. Butch Soper bowled my tournament, qualified great, got eliminated in the first round. The guy who beat him, did he win? No. But I'll tell you what, he's talked about how he beat Butch Soper and knocked him out of the event, and how great of a feeling that was. Any anybody on any given day, and
Always.
it got more publicity for the tournament that a major name had come down. Now, I use him as an example, but there's other tournaments too. Eric, you and I bowled the doubles tournament last year, John Baker's tournament. I forget the name of the event right now, and I apologize, John, but we did bowl that together, and obviously there was some good PR because Eric had bowled. Did that scare entries off?
No.
They were excited to see the 5-time PBA national champion coming out the bowl. Again, I do want to mention that I did snuff him in the tournament, even though we were partnered together, but that's neither here nor there. But I only have one, Eric, so I'm going to run with it for as long as I live.
That's okay. I'll still go to bed. I'll sleep good tonight. I'm good. Go right ahead. I'll sleep good.
You've given me enough beatings in SMBT and Nevada Masters. You have plenty of higher or PBA regionals. You have plenty of higher rankings than me. But one day, but that's the thing. It was my one day. And again, from the bowler side of me, that's what bothers me is that I just don't think that discriminating against the young seniors or even discriminating against in other tournaments, bowlers that are turned away by, you see these tournaments raise the handicap to 100% of 240. You know, a guy like me, we've had this discussion before, but there comes a point where you're just wondering, okay, there's only X amount of tournaments in the area. There's not a lot of scratch bowling going on anymore. What am I supposed to shoot? And then the argument is, oh, well, you got to go find different tournaments. Go bowl the PBA. I have a job. I work 50 hours a week. I can't afford to leave, to take a week off, to go travel to Japan, to go travel, as much as I would love to. Not that I'm of that caliber. I mean, I've always considered myself a great local player, a good regional player, and an okay national player. And I'm perfectly fine with that. But to be able to make a living, as you said, Eric, it's not going to happen. That's not why I bowl anymore. And I don't think a lot of people bowl for that reason. They bowl because they want to have competition and they want to enjoy it. So again, to discriminate against you or discriminate against any bowler, and the other thing I do want to mention that I think is just very funny to me at least, I don't know where the difference is between being a one-time PBA national champion or a 20-time PBA national champion. If you're a PBA national champion, you're a PBA.
Well, that was the whole thing that kind of really got me, where they come up with 3. So if you're a two-time champion, you're good. But once you get to 3, you turn into a god. I mean, that's where that separation is from 2 to 3. I mean, now I obviously understand what he did, and he told Fred when he did this, he knew I would be pissed. So it was kind of directly pointed at me because obviously I live here in Vegas. I live 10 minutes from that place. I mean, I know what he's trying to do, but I just think why are we always trying to water things down? Why are we always trying to bring down competition to make other people happy and to give everyone's got a chance regardless. They had a PBA senior regional in this town a few months back. And when it got down to the final match, a local player by the name of Russ Davies, a good local bowler, he winds up catching Walter Ray Williams in the final match. Now, I'm sure everyone was going to think Walter Ray is going to win the tournament. Guess what? Walter did not. Davies beat him, and that is the highlight of his career. He beat the greatest of all time, let's say. And if this rule would have been in place for that tournament, he would never have had that opportunity. So you are killing the Cinderella story. And I know, and he's going, well, if let's see, how did he say this? If Eric bowls, we're going to lose 20 entries. If Parker bowls, we're going to lose 30 entries. Well, why not say maybe you'll pick up more entries because maybe those people want a chance to rub elbows and beat those guys. Just like they do every year when they bowl the Senior U.S. Open here, when they get 200-300 entries, and all those guys are there, people show up, they're competing against them. Competition's competition. I just can't stand it, whether it's that or anything. Other tournaments do things like that. West Coast Seniors, of course, which is the West Coast Super Senior Tour now. They eliminated the 50 to 60-year-olds. I don't think they should do that anywhere. Scratch is scratch. You put your shoes on, you bowl. If you beat me, so be it. If you don't, you don't. But that's called competition. That's why we do what we do. Why do you try to make it to where the lesser players give them a chance? Everybody has a chance when you put your shoes on. That's why you compete. It's not the tat. It's not scratch amateur stuff. I mean, handicap tournaments. These are scratch tournaments. They have the high rollers and stuff. They don't allow any professionals, for the most part, to bowl in that. but this is a senior shootout. That's, a lot of one-time, two-time PBA champions are going to go bowl, but not a 3. Like I said, it's just ridiculous.
I don't know if he's still in Vegas, but I said that also eliminates Joe Salvimini.
Yeah, he's not, but if you wanted to, yes. But I'm thinking about guys who just turned 50, like Dennis Horan, Ryan Schaefer's going to be. They can't bowl. Well, what a crock. Why, that's just ridiculous.
And I reflect back, and God bless our friend Barry, but I was thinking about the Laughlin Cup. I mean, look at the top 5.
Exactly.
A little bit different story,
yeah.
But Barry Gertie at 71 years old,
yeah.
Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, won 2 matches against 2 very great bowlers. I mean, and eventually the winner, Jonathan Farrell, went against David Haynes, the king of Las Vegas,
and beat him,
if you will.
Exactly.
Beat him convincingly.
So that's why I'm sorry. I really, it's a shame because you look at all the rules and regulations of the tournament. It looks fantastic. There's a lot of money. Storm's involved, sponsoring. There's a lot of people. I mean, it's a big to do. If everyone shows up, it's a great tournament in a super great venue. There's only one little problem. You're eliminating really, really good bowlers and guys who are caught in the middle, like somebody like myself, who just happen to have more than 2 titles, but not 20 titles. And I'm sorry I'm not 63 yet. Sometimes I feel like I'm 63, but I'm not 63.
You don't look a day over 85, so I mean,
So, yeah, you know what? I went from being totally excited when I got the invite, and then, of course, I got invited to this tournament, which is even more ridiculous. I got so excited when I got invited, but then when I read it, I wanted to punch somebody. I was so aggravated, and that's what started this ball rolling. And I'm not done with this yet. I've got some good friends, like at the Bowlers Journal and whatever. I think the story needs to be out there. I think if I would want Norm Duke, Walter Ray Williams, Parker Bone to show up, because then maybe somebody might come watch. I think those guys draw attention. I think people want to watch the greats bowl. I mean, I think if everyone really understood what this tournament's all about, maybe nobody would, maybe what are you going to get, 20, 30 people to show up? And maybe if those guys come, maybe you get more people to show up. You don't know that, how do you know?
And that's the other thing, too. Yeah, you might lose a few entries. Let's say you do lose entries. You might not, you might. But what you might gain instead is fan interaction and people wanting to watch. More people are there, that attracts more sponsors. I could tell you as a tournament coordinator, if I went up to someone, and again, Masters of Mound's a prime example. They asked me, how many bowlers you got? I said, I had about 40 bowlers show up. They're like, oh. I said, but there were 40 of the top bowlers, and I had 200 people in that bowling center watching, which I did throughout the day. And you know what? They said, oh, well, let's go ahead and put some money on this because now we have an audience to watch. So, yeah, I get a little fired up and excited, too, because to me, it hurts bowling as a sport for spectators. Even though it is a participatory sport, people still enjoy watching.
Absolutely.
Why would you deprive them of watching the best bowlers out there?
I mean, I'm telling you, know it and I know it. When people go to watch nowadays, they still like to watch the guys who in their 50s bowl because those are all the big names. They love watching them bowl. I bowl a few senior stops here and there. There's always a pretty good fan base there watching. Well, you want people there. That's what makes the tournament exciting. If you have a tournament and nobody shows up, it's really kind of sad and depressing. It's just, to me, I like you said, we understand why he did this, but I think it's for all the wrong reasons. And it's a shame because, Ron Moore, he's a great bowler himself. He's a 7 or 8 time titleist on the senior tour. But he's thinking of this thing in a completely different way. And that's obviously it's his deal. And the tournament committee, people who are involved there, I guess they're thinking in that same way. And to me, it's just wrong. And I have no respect. I've lost all my respect basically for all these people involved who would do something like this for all the reasons we discussed. Like I said, you could take me out of the mix. If Walter Ray or Parker Bone wanted to come and get on the lanes and bowl, you let them bowl because they can be beat just like anyone else. And people will come to watch. And those guys, that doesn't mean they're going to win. Yes, they've got all the creed and everything about them with their Hall of Famers, but people you still can beat them. It's bowling. You know, anything can happen in a one-game match. And when guys like Russ Davies can beat Walter Ray, that is the perfect example of this. You can't get a more perfect example of this. And it does happen. And it happens a lot, especially nowadays with equipment and conditions. It doesn't matter how talented you are. If you don't have the right pieces in your hand, you're not going to beat anybody. And that's why when you kick off a tournament like this and you make something special like a senior World Series of bowling, I'm sorry, you let anyone bowl. Even the PBA this past year in the World Series of Bowling, they opened it up to amateurs. They opened it up to everyone. They wanted to make sure everyone showed up and bowled. They're trying to fill it. They didn't put any limitations on it. And
they had several amateurs at cash too.
Plenty. They had plenty.
Yeah.
And they had a waiting list, etc. And this thing here, you're limiting, you're taking away 10, 15, 20, 30 guys, maybe even more. I mean, I'm only thinking of some of the guys with 3 titles off the top of my head. There could be more who might have considered coming out the bowl. Now they're not going to.
And again, it comes back to what I said before. What happens in another 5 years, or even, again, I don't want to be morbid, and I'm sorry to any older bowler, but let's be honest. Let's say you're 60 right now, in 10 years you're going to be 70. Can you still do this at 70 years old? There are some.
Hard to do.
But you know what? Yeah, and what's going to happen then? And again, as I said, if I was, and maybe it's because of my personality, but Eric, I think you and I share this opinion. If you tell me to stick it now, and then you ask me 10 years from now to come bowl your tournament, I'm going to tell you to stick it then, because there's no point in me. I would feel disrespected. As simple as that. So,
well,
but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, this thing is 7-8 months away. I mean, I doubt anything's going to change. I'm sure they're gonna go with this for this year. But I'm going to make sure that the media and people know how wrong this is, because I don't know how this just came out 2-3 days ago, and I'm not sure how widespread it is, but I think people need to know of this. To me, this is an injustice only in a small bowling little world, not in the other big thing. It's not, you're not gonna lose sleep over this. But it's just wrong in a sport or a game that is diminishing. You're going to make it harder and more difficult for people to bowl in hopes of getting more people to bowl. Maybe, you know what I'm saying? Maybe, but I just think it's wrong in so many ways. I don't think you should be punished for what you did well back in the day. But then again, if you're old enough, it's okay, because if you're over 63, we kind of figure you're a little bit past your time anyway, so we'll let you bowl. I mean, it just seems wrong. It's wrong in a lot of ways. And, I guess in a certain way, I'm going to be a little bit of his nightmare for a while. I guess, he said, he made a comment to Fred, because I read the story, how, Eric's a great bowler, and I'm sure he's not going to like this, but this is, in another way, it's good that I won't have one more great left-hander bowling there in the plaza, because the lanes there seem to favor the left side. He made that comment. So he put that out as well. And again, I haven't even got into the left-right stuff, but he threw that out as well. Once again, that doesn't endear me to him at all. And I did respect him. It's all gone now, unfortunately, because now you're going to bring up something like that. And that advantage that he talks about, that could be eliminated in a blink of an eye, just by the way the lanes are done. In a blink of an eye. So,
I was going to say, it goes back to what we said earlier, too. What's stopping a right-hander from bowling left-handed if supposedly there's an advantage on that side? Know what I mean?
Of course.
So.
But, I mean, this is just one more ridiculous thing. But, again, it's just a shame. And, obviously I wish I never would have been invited. I never would have been invited to the thing I can't bowl.
Well, I'll tell you what, on that note, we're closing in on the end of the show. Let's try to end it on some happy stuff, because Lord knows.
Happy.
The happy dance. Good news. Well, let's throw out some good things. One, I want to say a big shout out to Steve Adams and Mongoose Bowling Products with the Clean Shot. Tremendous product. I do want to plug him. I know since I had to switch two-handed, I don't know if any of you have been following. I know several of you follow my Facebook page. I have osteoarthritis and degenerative tendonitis in my wrist. The surgeon basically says they can do a surgery, but there's a chance my hand will be like this for the rest of my life. So I'm kind of opting not to do that for the time being. Fortunately, with the clean shot and going to the two-handed style, putting more of the pressure on my forearm and my bicep, I've been able to bowl again without pain. And this is the first time in about 2.5 years that I haven't had to wrap my wrist before I bowl. I'm just using the clean shot. So for those of you who have not seen it, go to mongoosebowlingproducts.com. Take a look at the clean shot. A tremendous product. Obviously, yes, we are sponsored by him, but even if I wasn't sponsored by him, I would promote this thing to no end. As anyone that has ever asked me questions about product knows, if I don't believe in it, I'm not going to sell it to you. It just doesn't work that way. But no, this has been a great thing. I know that several bowlers have actually said some very positive things. Ben Laughlin comes to mind. I know he had talked about it. I also believe
Sean Rash.
Sean Rash, yes. It's very popular. So again, big kudos out to Steve Adams. Evolving something else. There's some people believe you shouldn't be able to wear supports when you bowl.
Well, yeah, that'll be another show. We can talk about the wrist device versus no to wrist device. But for the people who've got the problems there, this is something that's pretty much for the wrist only, and it allows the hand to be wide open so you can manipulate your hand. Whereas the other products kind of stabilize your hand and you have less flexibility. A lot of people like that, but more of the contemporary players or the guys who like to put stuff on the ball, they like their hand to be open and they can manipulate it. With the clean shot, it goes on the wrist, supports the tendons very well, but your hand's wide open. You can do whatever you want. So in a way, it's almost like having nothing on, but you really do have something on. So it's completely different than a mongoose glove. And, Steve and I, we had a discussion on this a few years ago. And when he decided to jump back into it, I said, wouldn't it be cool to create something that's not the traditional mongoose, maybe something that's just more for the wrist or in a different way? And obviously, he thought about it, and he's such a genius. He came up with this really cool product that I demoed about six months ago, and now it's basically they're making them, and they're available, and there's a big back order on them. We're having a hard time getting them for the shop, but it's a great product. And again, it feels like you don't have anything on, but you really do, and it gives you, if you've got any kind of wrist problem, then you're missing by not using this thing.
No, it's a tremendous product. I know Mom has been back ordered on them in her shop, and it's been tough to get them in because they are so popular. So big kudos to him. I know we're trying to get him on the show. I spoke to him about a week ago, and we're trying to get him to do the show. Now we're back. We actually could have him on the show since we have a show again. So that's always a positive.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have him on.
Yes. Also, big kudos out to Brunswick Bowling. Both Eric and I are members of Team Brunswick. Thank you very much for all of your great equipment. Had a chance to punch up my danger zone recently, which is kind of funny to say that. But in fact, although ironically right now my ball of choice is an old DV8 dude that's been punched twice, but it has negative side weight in it just because I need to take a little bit out of the ball. But it's they've had, again, between Radical DV8 and Brunswick, you have probably the most versatile ball line in bowling.
You're gonna have to drill up a couple of Strike Kings.
Yeah, that's probably gonna be. I actually, the only thing I wish, and we've talked about it, I know they have something possibly for the future. I wish Brunswick did have a regular thin ball. Yeah. We've discussed that before. But, again, for what is available, it is a great product line, and I have nothing but good things to say about the equipment. And other than that, again, just a big thank you to all of our fans that have been buying what we've been selling for the last, God, has it been 4 years now, Eric?
It has. It feels like 4 years since we've done this, to be honest with you. But it's great that, like I said, we talked about Fred. Fred's been writing. He writes a lot of great human interest stories with bowling, and he's terrific. And it's just, he'll write about professional, he'll write about the amateur. He writes about everything. That's why I gave him this story with my senior thing. I figured he would run with it, which he did, and because it is a story, And he's been keeping the Bowling Evolved moniker alive on Facebook, and we thank him for that, of course.
Absolutely. Again, Fred is a tremendous writer. Please check out bowlingevolved.com, facebook.com/bowlingevolved. I also want to give a couple shout-outs to other people that have supported us. Recently, Jeff Riggles gave us some really nice support, commented on the controversy with Brian Voss and Belmonte. You can check him out at the11thframe.com. Again, a tremendous writer. Also, big shout-out to Larry Lickstein. Litch, your old friend, Eric. He was also nice enough to comment.
One of the great, yeah, anytime, boy, talk about somebody you'd love to have on the show. I mean, I might just not even talk and just listen. That, believe it or not, because he's got stories that you can't believe. It's, we really have to try to get him on the show because he would be fantastic.
I would love to have him. I know I read some of the stuff he posts, and he gave me a great compliment. He read what I had written and said that it was perfect. He wished he could write it the way I did, and that, to me, that was a tremendous compliment from really just one of the all-time influential
Hall of Famer, PBA Hall of Famer. One of the first guy to drill balls out on tour. I mean, he invented that whole thing. Just quite the character. And, he was out there for all those years, especially in my early years. And, he's just got great stories, just stories that people will just love, especially people who love bowling. They'd love it.
I'd love to have him on. Also, I do want to give a big thank you out to Brian and Amber Hirsch, of course. Brian Hirsch being the member of the International Bowling Media Association, been a member of Bowling Evolved basically since our inception, and he is still promoting the brand out of Phoenix. Great guy. Him and Amber both are fantastic individuals, so big thank you to them. And again, I can't stress this enough, anyone or everyone that has been continuing to follow us on our Facebook page or messaging me or bothering Eric, as he says, I don't know, his words, not mine, I don't know, but
nobody bothers me. Well, I shouldn't say nobody bothers me. And maybe I shouldn't say that. Yeah, that's probably not the right choice of words. There are a few people right now who are bothering me, but hey, you know what? That's what makes the world go around. But we'll have hopefully we'll have some more interesting topics. The list of people to bring on this show are endless from all throughout the industry. And hopefully now we get the ball rolling again, get into a nice routine, get some people on here every other week or whatever, and hopefully we'll get more than 5 or 6 people to watch.
I think might be at 7 again, depends after this. But again, I do want to say thank you all. If there has been a little lag or some issues, again, we're hoping to get this corrected. We have a tremendous recording software. It just depends if Skype's going to be the way to go. But for Eric Forkel, I've been Dustin J. Markowitz. Man, have a great night.
Good night.